Madam President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam President. Today is the 51st anniversary of Roe versus Wade. We should be standing here celebrating more than 5 decades worth of access to essential reproductive health care that is central to well-being, life, liberty, inequality, and economic and social freedom for everyone. Health care that is essential to equity for women, LGBTQ, Black, Brown, Indigenous, rural, immigrant, low-income, and disabled Americans. But instead of celebrating, we are fighting for Americans' freedom. We are fighting to protect the right to abortion. Since the right-wing extremist Supreme Court majority's Dobbs decision, women and millions of people across America have watched as states strip away their freedom to make decisions about their own bodies and their own families. Taking Dobbs as a clarion call to rip away Americans' freedoms, right-wing Republicans across the country have marched forward to strip away the right to abortion, state by state, with calls to expand that to a federal ban on abortion. These politicians are more obsessed with interfering in the lives and decisions of the American people and their health care providers than actually fixing the health care system of our country to make sure that every American can get the care they need when and where they need that care. They are more obsessed with pretending they know more about the healthcare workers trained to support patient decision-making than actually representing the American people who want to see their right to abortion being protected. Americans across the country have suffered horrific pain and hardship, like Massachusetts resident Kate Deneen, who drove 500 miles to receive an abortion after her son experienced a catastrophic stroke in utero. This suffering especially affects those who do not have the means or the resources to travel across state lines. Tens of millions of Americans live in states where their reproductive health care is banned or restricted. And these right-wing extremists aren't finished. Dobbs was but a preview of coming atrocities by this Supreme Court and by right-wing governors and state legislatures all across our country. They have threatened the right to contraception. They've blocked access to birth control for teenagers at federally funded clinics. They have suspended emergency contraception payments for survivors of sexual assault. They will not stop at overturning Roe versus Wade. On this anniversary of Roe, we must recommit to taking decisive action to protect millions of Americans' access to abortion care, remove unnecessary limits on reproductive freedom, and protect against coming attacks from right-wing Republicans and this extremist Supreme Court. We must abolish the filibuster, a Jim Crow-era relic impeding the will of the American people. We must pass the Women's Health Protection Act to restore Roe versus Wade as the law of the land, protect patients' rights to an abortion, and protect healthcare workers providing these services. We must guard against coming attacks on our freedom by passing my Right to Contraception Act and pass the Judiciary Act to expand the Supreme Court and bring balance and fairness back to the Supreme Court before they make more and more decisions that overturn precedents that have been protecting the American people for generations. We have a moral duty to act. There is no more time to waste. Supreme Court justices may serve lifetime appointments, but we cannot wait a lifetime to right injustices. Congress can step in to protect the American people from the overreach of this radical Supreme Court majority. We must rise up and meet this moment. with everything which we have. And I ask my Senate colleagues, what other rights Americans must lose before we act? What vulnerable communities in their states will be left without health care, without autonomy, without freedom? There can be no justice without health care justice in our country. And there can be no health justice without reproductive freedom in the United States of America being once again restored. So I thank you, Madam President. And with that, I yield back.
Madam President.
The senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by saying a very special thank you to Senator Butler for calling us here today. Today should have been the 51st anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Instead, too many people can't get the medical care they need when they need it, where they need it. Students who are desperate for help get the runaround. Poor women face impossible hurdles. Children who have survived rape and become pregnant are frightened and confused. Fertility clinics are abandoning services, and families that had hoped for a baby face excruciating heartache when a pregnancy goes wrong and doctors are barred from helping. At every turn, we see a new form of hell brought to us by an extremist Supreme Court and a powerful band of Republican lawmakers determined to obliterate reproductive freedom across the country. To every person watching these events unfold and feeling hurt, I see you, I am with you, and I grieve alongside you. But I do more than grieve, more than complain. I fight back. And I am asking you to fight back too, because right now, this is our moment to act. And if we don't, we might not get another opportunity for a long, long time. Roe wasn't overturned by some accident. We're here because Republican extremists have been waging a decades-long war to take down Roe. They poured billions of dark money into our politics to chip away at our rights. They handpicked judges with proven anti-abortion records. They took over state and local governments. They built an anti-Roe coalition right here in Congress. And the very second that the Supreme Court gave them the green light, they jumped into action, enacting the most severe restrictions possible on abortion access. The result? Over the last year and a half, over 20 states have banned or severely restricted abortion access, passed laws criminalizing doctors who perform abortions, or threatened access to pregnancy care, miscarriage care, fertility assistance, and more. Well-organized and well-funded extremists have brought lawsuits to further restrict access, hoping to undermine access in states that are firmly pro-choice. The result has been cruel and frightening. Some people have given in to despair, but I don't see it that way. To me, the end of Roe marked a new era in the movement for abortion rights. Yes, an era that has been harrowing for people across the country, but also one that marks the end of a plan Republicans hatched 40 years ago to reverse Roe and the beginning of a new chapter. And in this new chapter, we're leading the way. Together, we've made clear that an overwhelming majority of Americans support reproductive freedom and individual rights to make decisions about their own bodies. Across this country, millions of Americans have come together and said they are with us, not just in places like California and New York, but in Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, and Ohio. The Biden-Harris administration has stepped up to vigorously protect reproductive freedom, from defending medication abortion from baseless lawsuits to preserving access to care for service members and veterans, to strengthening protection for patients' sensitive health information. Republicans know that the majority of Americans oppose overturning Roe, but they aren't letting up. Instead, overturning Roe is not enough for them. They want more. They have introduced legislation to ban abortion nationwide. And if they can't pass it through Congress, they'll use a Republican president to dust off a 19th century anti-obscenity law instead to try to get the job done. We cannot let that happen. We have the energy, we have the numbers, and we know what we need to do. President Biden has called on Congress to act. We need to pass the Women's Health Protection Act to protect our human rights and to roll back the extreme abortion bills that radical right-wing legislatures have enacted across this country. And we need to get in the fight right now to secure the Congress that we need to get this job done. This won't be easy, but important fights never are. I know our strength. I've seen it in the millions of people marching in the streets for abortion rights. I've seen it in the thousands of calls made to congressional offices. I've seen it in the resolve of people standing up for Kate Cox in Texas and Brittany Watts in Ohio. And that's how I know that even when it gets hard, we will persist. From this moment on, what happens is up to us. Together, we have the power to restore Roe and to protect our right to make our own decisions about our own bodies and our own futures. I am in this fight all the way. The stakes are too high not to be. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.